acolo este, va fi corner, dragi ascultători.
Hello, Internet. That there, you. I need you. Welcome back to Val Verde Broadcasting and It Ain't Broke, the movie discussion show that starts as it means to go on with no planning whatsoever. I'm trying to cover for the lower third, as discussed before. Joining me here in the man cave that is Val Verde is Ricardo Jackson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think it's 8 seconds. I can't remember. It's longer than you think. Sometimes I speed it up. Don't look behind the curtain.
You may not like what you see.
My bum.
Today we are having a wee chit chat on the 1990 sequel classic, Stephen Hopkins' Predator 2. Are we too old for this shit? I think we might be. This obviously is a film that I think if you've had any history with us over the years, you know that we sort of fall down on different sides of the divide.
I've never specifically spoken about it, because we talk about it in the broader context, but I've never specifically done any video about this before.
Right.
Never did a commentary.
Yeah, I did the commentary.
I think I did a Let's Play of Predator 2 on Mega Drive. I think that's the closest I've been. It's not really comparable.
No, I don't think so. No. So, where to start? Well, I suppose it's obviously a sequel to Predator. Came out in 1990, directed by Stephen Hopkins. Someone who I think gets the short shrift a bit too much. I think people call him a bit of a boilerplate / director for hire for certain things. I think that's more a product of the opportunities he's been given. He's often brought in seemingly fairly last minute to just deliver and film, rather than having the creative input from the start and stuff like that. He's not so much the auteur when it comes to things like this. I don't know, but I don't know of any works that he's had that end-to-end process on. I think generally in terms of his mainstream output, anyway, it's kind of like director for hire.
And he's done a lot of TV subsequently.
Yes, yeah, he did 24. And I do you know what? I think for the stuff he's done, I think it's all right. I quite,
I like Lost in Space. Ba, 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 ba,
is it because of that?
Maybe.
Is it just the thing?
I like that film, and I will die on that hill, but that's not why we're here.
No. Well, it looks like I'm dying on this particular hill today because we're talking about Predator 2. Yeah, you all know it. I'm pretty sure everyone who's watching this knows the film. We don't need to sort of cover it off, plot point by plot point, but obviously it is, in a way, nothing to do with the original. And how could it be? It obviously starts with that big aerial on a jungle and then pans up to Los Angeles.
It is written by the Thomas brothers again, isn't it? Is it Jim and Dan Thomas again?
Mr. Black.
Mr. Black, I believe it is.
Yeah, John Thomas being a euphemism for your penis. That's right.
Yep.
But it was based on Concrete Jungle, yes, which is a comic book.
I'm unclear on that.
Yeah.
I think they might be two kind of concurrently existing things, or maybe it's got, because it shares a lot with Concrete Jungle. I remember I had Concrete Jungle. I didn't have the comic. I had the book.
Right.
And it seemed to share a lot with it. I'm just not confident enough to say it's based on it.
There's a computer game with the same title, although doesn't.
That's nothing, and that is a bad game.
Yeah, I had it on N64.
Yeah, no, it's a PS2.
Right, I had an Xbox. That's right, and it jumps all over time frames and so it's a bit.
And it has Xenomorphs in it, and it's generally rubbish.
Does it?
Yeah, the reveal is Xenomorphs.
Spoilers. Which I never finished it because
it sucks dick, and it's 10 years old.
It was difficult because the controls were shit. That was annoying, so I quit.
My brother, bless him, loved it and will die on that hill.
Fair enough.
It's a shit hill to die on now, I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't die on that hill now. Yeah, so it seemingly was... I mean, look, it originally would have starred Arnold, I think, and because Concrete Jungle, am I right in saying it stars his brother as an LA cop?
Yeah.
And
that's a character that kind of lived on in the Dark Horse stuff.
Right.
I understand that the role of Keyes was originally going to be Dutch, and then they retooled that for Gary Busey, for Mad Gary Busey.
A fucking alien. Yeah, he's a very Gary Busey in it. and of course you've got an odd cameo by Robert Darby. Because I always think he's in it more than he is, but he's only really in a couple of scenes to chew out Harrigan, and that's it.
It's strange, that, isn't it?
He's great.
Strange place for him. Yeah, he's great.
It's Darby, man.
It's Darby.
But yeah, so it's set against. So here's okay. So
well, it's set in the exotic future of 1997.
there is that. There's that weird thing about 1997 being a jumping off point for a lot of things like Judgment Day is 97.
It's when the mainstream adopted laser-sighted guns. As we all remember, everybody had a laser-sighted gun.
A television-sized laser scope on top of our
It looks like a fucking
Desert Eagle.
Yeah, like it's like a bit of drain pipe.
Well,
on top of a fucking...
funnily enough, actually, our discussion. So having covered in Running Man the kind of seeping in of sort of 2000 AD-esque aesthetics and attitudes towards things in the 80s, and I consider this as kind of being an 80s film. I know it came out in 1990, but it was obviously shot in 89 and began its life in the 80s. There is that over the top. It's not just the fact that it's set in the future of 7 years hence. It's also that life is ridiculously cheap, you know, which is an interesting backdrop to have a Predator in, because obviously it's kind of like, why do we give a fuck, you know? Like, I don't know. I mean, nothing's made of that, and that's
it does have a small element of trash TV as well, doesn't it? With like Rack Bottom,
hardcore. It's hardcore. That guy's just running around a real sleazy asshole, like, "Hey, Harrigan, more mutilation!" And he gets punched in the lens and knocked out because he just goes, "Fuck you!" and like punches the thing. Strange
conception by filmmakers that the view on a television screen comes from the presenter's face.
But it obviously starts with that big shootout in the warehouse with El Scorpion, and he's like fisting cocaine into his nose. He's literally going like Scorpion is ready. Like, he's absolutely crazy. And that guy's in Last Action Hero.
He's one of those kind of stunt guy dudes.
So, okay, what's your kind of take on Predator? Because I know you're not a fan.
I'm not a fan. I don't hate it though.
Right.
It's not something like, you know, like Alien versus Predator 2. I actively dislike and hate. I mean,
The Predator.
There's a review on this very channel you can go watch. Something, just going back to what you were saying a minute ago, just in terms of the synopsis, something that seems to have been lost. So part of the setup is there's an unprecedented heat wave in LA, and the Predator comes to the city to hunt. The kind of predators being cold-blooded and attracted to warm climate seems to have gone, even the Predator. I'm not saying it's the only place they would go, because obviously they've got to be more versatile than that, but that seems to have gone.
I've never understood why it is that they would be attracted to a hot climate, because if you see an infrared, surely you want your prey to stand out against the cold background.
Oh, but their technology would compensate for that. I just think they're cold-blooded reptilian.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You know, they live on some kind of jungle.
And another thing that's been lost since the first movie is when he takes his helmet off, he's virtually blind because he's in a hot environment. Everything's hot.
Environment. Well, that's what I mean.
So
yeah, right. So that kind of filters out the extraneous.
Clearly the helmet filters it out.
Because on their planet it's probably like densely jungled or whatever. I'm not going to start talking about the fucking Yaujta or whatever.
Well, that's okay. So here's a criticism from me then. One of the things people stand up for Predator 2 with is go, oh, but I expand on the Predator and it's barren.
They give him more toys.
Yeah, that again, I have to stand by my guns on this. I sort of like that about it, but I have to stick by my guns on the whole alien thing about like stop overexposing the monster. When you look at the great things about the first Predator, it's that we don't see it. It's a reveal at the end, and all that stuff has its internal logic. Like all his gadgets and gizmos have internal logic. Once you start going, yeah, but he also has a smart disc and a spear and a this and a that and the other, you're starting to get into, and people talk about the mythology. The mythology? Are you fucking crazy? It's an alien hunter, and the more you try and make it, that's the trouble with it. It's like trying to get that. Like now, it's a thing where it collects spines because it wants to do genetic. You know, fuck off with that. I'm sorry, but it's like that's too much. You're gonna
get crucified for this. I love it.
I don't care, man. Like I'm sorry that there is no.
Oh, on Yaujta Prime every 3rd of August.
Well, all right. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go off and make up your own stories about Yaujta, I mean, who came up with going Yaujta? Like that isn't a voucher company.
You collect enough tickets to go for afternoon tea.
Whatever, but it's look, that's fine if you want to do that, but understand what. Like I think it's So the first Predator is a film that is revered, and rightly so, but by people who don't really understand why they revere it a lot of the time. It seems a lot of what comes out, they're like, yeah, because, like, get to the chopper and all that. It's like...
I said this in the AVP2R review, like, it's a good concept and design that worked well once, provably. I like Predators, we talked about that, but now that video doesn't exist anymore. Okay, look, going back to Predator 2.
Yeah.
For that is why we were here.
Yeah, I suppose I'm just contextualising.
No, yeah, of course. Predator 2 changes the genre of the film in an unsatisfying way. Okay. Because it becomes a detective procedural story. So because all of these kind of films, the original Predator does have an investigation strand because they're trying to figure out the mystery, but it's not kind of a police procedural. Yeah. This is a procedural investigation story. The problem is all of those characters are solving a mystery to which we already know the answer. Yeah. So when it's kind of like, ooh, a net, we're going like, well, it's Predator. Yeah. So when you've got Harrigan like snooping around people's apartments and doing drug busts, we all know what's going on. Yeah. So it's just not interesting. Right. And I think that kind of context for this film, like a police investigation, okay, so we already know, it's just not very interesting to watch. And I find it, and the thing is with it, I just find it quite boring. Okay. And it's one of these things where it's endlessly quoted because like King Willie and all that stuff. And people will always tell you about moments from Predator 2. But as a thing that hangs together, and I also think in terms, and perhaps as a result of this, I don't know, its structure is mush. Yeah. Like, it doesn't even feel like there's really a beginning, middle, and end. It just sort of goes like, all for 2 hours. Right. And then the payoff is like, well, more Predators. Yeah, yeah. Speaking of King Willie, actually, he's from the Bahamas. Calvin Lockhart. Is it Lockhart? Yeah, Calvin. I don't know. I think it's Calvin Lockhart. Tell him about the IMDb. You want to tell him about the IMDb? Yeah, he and I jostle for most popular person born in the Bahamas quite a lot on IMDb. He's dead and he beats me most of the time, so... And I don't mean to denigrate that, but the list is populated by 2 people. Yeah. Well, no, there are other people on it. Like Kevin Kimbo Slice is on it. I'm on the IMDb because someone made a profile for this. Yeah. And I don't even have a picture, and I'm miscredited for being in some movie I'm not in. But I'm not credited for the one movie I actually am in. So there you go. Yeah, there'll be like Richard Jackson, IIVVXI. Oh, got a common as fuck name as well. It's going to be all the way down those Roman numerals, don't you worry. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so the backdrop's important. So it's heatwave LA, it's heightened, it's crazy. A lot of people have said that that's jarring with what came in the first Predator, but I would argue it's the same aesthetic. Well, because it's not just the heatwave as well. It's they're drawn to conflict. Yeah, they're drawn to conflict during heatwaves, so that the core thing is there. Yes, I think the Predator in the city is a good idea, but I think then making it a police procedural investigation story is not. I take your point about that, and I think you're right. And yeah, because you've got that scene where they're analysing the spear tip or whatever, and she's going like, "It's made of alien material," and we were like, we saw it fired by an alien at, it's like there's a nice little bit of world building. Even if you hadn't seen Predator, you would know that wasn't. There are elements that are not from the periodic table and stuff like that, and it's kind of like, okay, that's a nice little bit. Yeah. And things, like Bill Paxton's in there, which is great. Richard Alonso, there is a cool cast. Yeah. But I don't think it has anything to add in particular or anything to say. No. And in terms of its filmmaking, Stephen Hopkins is no John McTiernan. So there's something about Predator that's really hard to distill. And it's kind of lightning in a bottle, and it's kind of this ensemble cast and its setting. And there's something I think is quite hard to replicate in that. Right. And I think it's an attempt to do that in a quite sort of wrong-headed way that is just unsatisfying. I think part of the problem is when you take that, because obviously the first film features heightened masculinity, over-the-top action. It is very. I think the two work together in terms of that aspect. I do think that like the first film plays in a pool that people forget that like they think it's more realistic somehow, and it really isn't. But like. It's just set against the backdrop of a jungle, whereas I think when you take that and you put it into a world where you've got other people populating it, and it's not just us versus a creature, it's like a creature that's got to exist in a public realm, it starts to become a bit... I do take, but you've got to be... I think the problem with, again, it's like Predator is a self-contained thing. The fact that it has any legs at all is due to the fact that it's a John McTiernan film. That's in and of itself, but it's got legs as a sort of like people wank on about Youchers and shit like that because of Stan Winston's design. It's not because
anything else. It's just
if
he's a hunter that's
stuck with that original fucking ant thing,
and
we would
John
not
Van
be
Damme.
having this conversation.
No.
There is no way that thing would have spawned everything that Winston design did. And a lot of what you take away from that creature is how it looks, because it's wearing bone necklaces and stuff. It's like, oh, it's a hunter, it comes from some kind of warrior culture.
It's because he's put in the time to develop a backstory for himself to put on the character, and they gave it to Kevin Peter Hall, who's an actor and a dancer and all that stuff. For that very reason, it's so that you all that's internalised in the character. We're not supposed to know it, but it's supposed to add veracity, add weight to what it is.
It adds to the story. It's a little bit of flavour that adds to that storytelling. And Kevin Peter Hall is back for his second and final. I think he was the Harry and the Hendersons.
He was,
Bigfoot, wasn't he? Yeah,
yeah,
bless him. Yeah. Second and final role as Predator. Really great physicality, so he does that really, really well, of course. And the design again. And this is another thing. The whole thing of Predator 2 is that it's a hat on a hat. It has nothing to add, and it's shown in the design of the city hunter. Predator. It's just loads of wouldn't it be cooler if it had more spikes on it? Maybe we should just... And it's got all this unnecessary detail. I find it quite an unappealing design. Okay. It's quite ugly. I mean, you don't... It shouldn't matter that much.
In hindsight, I'd probably swap them round. Weirdly.
Oh, man, no, I love that first design.
I love it too.
That first one is a capsule and unaffected by Predator 2.
I'm happy.
Schmanness.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But I just think the city hunter looks actually more like he belongs in the jungle because he's sort of brown.
In a jungle, in a jungle rough.
Yeah, what you said. Predator was very much a film that fell into that category I was talking about in relation to The Running Man, which is that film I would sit with my dad and watch and have a good time. And more broadly, that I think then is the kind of thing that people watched as kids or blokes or teenagers. It's that sort of male bonding film, I suppose. And Predator 2, my dad hates that, by the way, hates Predator 2, but it was a film I sort of I didn't know existed. I remember seeing, I think I saw the box in Tesco or something, it was like, what? And then I think it was on TV. I mean, this must have been mid-90s by this point, and I was like, and it felt like this little film that had been made for me about this thing that I used to love watching. I was like, oh fuck, there's this whole other film about what are you fucking, and I suppose coming at it from that point of view as a 11-year-old or something, it felt really cool, and it had really big action and big silliness in it, and I wasn't under any. And I suppose at that age you're going so that's why the Predator does that, or that's what look, there's more. We find out more, because the big thing about Predator was obviously you didn't really see it till the end, and as a kid that's sort of unsatisfying in a way, because you're kind of like, oh, the monster, all that shit. So I suppose it spoke more to my kind of younger mindset that I liked. But in hindsight, I've still kept I still think it's over the top and silly, but then the first one sort of is as well. But it takes itself a bit more seriously. I think in this one, it's not. One thing people seem to level criticism at it for is for Danny Glover, and they say they've replaced Arnold with this old flabby Danny Glover. He's in banging shape, man.
He is, and also I think if you have to replace Arnold, there's no sense in getting Dolph Lundgren, or there's no point getting someone similar. You have to go in a completely different direction. So, a middle-aged police detective, it's Murtaugh, isn't it? It's Murtaugh.
Yeah,
it really is.
I mean, it is. I mean, that's the thing. It's sort of like it is. I'm too old for this shit. But it's in that heightened reality, and that's.
There are. This is the thing. I mean, there are a few things here, but so for example, why is it set in the future? The future. I mean, I don't understand what that adds other than laser sights on the guns, because there was no effort in the first film. The first film does take place in more grounded reality, if you like, because it's set in the present day. Don't get me wrong, I'm going back to your point, I do not think it's realistic. I mean, comparatively, outside of the alien, everything you see is contemporary. And it's set away from civilization, so you have no real grasp.
Well, that's why, that's where I think.
It's when you come to Predator 2, I don't see why it's necessary. I don't think it adds anything other than laser sights on the guns.
I think it's to give them the pretext to say it's dystopic, there's violence.
Well, I think you could have done that anyway. I mean, or maybe it was because it was too close to the LA riots, and they were.
Could be.
Actually, when the LA riots happened, someone's. I don't know, because there was already violence and stuff in LA, and you could have had some crazy drug war thing. And again, the reality of the film is just quite boring, and I just find it this big kind of morass, and it's just this kind of big sweaty mess of a film where not a lot happens for a really long time, and you've already had the payoff 3 years previously. So why?
Here's why I consider it to be the second best Predator film, is because though it makes strides towards doing what the latter films did, it still manages to just about not be a film about the Predator. Don't get me wrong, it starts adding shit and it does all the things I don't want it to do, but once you get to Predators, really it's about the Predators. Once you get to AVP, it's about the aliens and the Predators, and it's like, if you centralise that character and it's really their story, it doesn't work. Does not
See,
work.
that to me is why I will disagree with you on Predators. I think Predators, probably its biggest crime is that it's a bit too similar to Predator, it's a bit too reverent. Because it does focus on that ensemble of characters and they have their own internal conflicts. It also has the situation where they're investigating something we know the answer to, but the film knows its audience, so shows us what we want to see early on, because we know what's going on, and the mystery now is how they're on a different planet instead of what's hunting us. And the kind of stuff about the super predators, I don't like that design. I find it all a bit hokey, but and that goes to expand things without spoon feeding you loads of junk. It's just like, oh, there are bigger ones and they wear blacker stuff. Like, it doesn't really feed you too much, and there's some Civil War or some shit. But I think it works way better as a sequel.
I think, I suppose I just find that attempt to level up the Predator fucks me off. It's that they did it in that, and they did it in The Predator, and it's like, what am I watching? Like, why am I?
Well, the Predator is a whole other level of bad. I mean, that's just off the scale in terms of its awfulness. But
I think okay. So another thing that I will give you is things like the Predator fucking sliding down a drain pipe and crashing into an old lady's bathroom, who chases it or goes to attack it with a broom and it runs out, and all these silly, like, I don't think it gives a shit, all that sort of stuff. The ending is slightly unsatisfying. I know it's a sort of hoisted by its own petard thing, but like Danny Glover stabs it because dry ice. Basically he's saved by dry ice because it can't see the big flashy light thing that he's holding. It doesn't. The monster isn't scary enough. I think it starts off like it is, but
there's a nice bit of world building in that ending. In the kind of old Predator giving him the old pistol, it's kind of like, oh, so they're long lived. Yeah. It's not like every third moon on Yautja Prime, the ceremony of Squender. It's like, no. He's got a pirate gun because he's 300 years old. Yeah, that's so cool. So actually, not only are they kind of stronger than us and faster than us, but they're very long lived. Yeah. Comparatively.
The thing I took away from that as well, actually, in hindsight, was that it was like, this is a trophy we took from your planet when we first came here.
Okay.
Ignoring AVP, of course. Take it, because he says, take it. And they leave. And I always thought that of like, look, this is a remnant we had. We took, okay, you take it. We're giving it back to you. We're out of here. We're not going to fuck with you anymore, kind of thing. I almost felt like a wrap up of like, okay, no more predators.
Right.
It's just, look, I think the problem is that the longevity it's had as a property is because of just the design of a creature.
It's a good design and idea that worked. You can only say it truly worked well once. Yeah. And I like Predators. I think it's good. It's a good fun movie.
And that's fine. I would never deny you that. I mean, I don't,
But it truly worked well once. Yeah. And I think way too much has been made of it. I think you could probably say the same thing about the Alien series as well.
I think so.
In that got, it was cool, but the more you see, the more diminished it becomes, and why should I give a shit by the time Alien Covenant comes out? Yeah. And it's a shame to have to talk about these things in the same breath, but they're kind of inextricably linked now. You can't unfortunately pick that apart. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the many reasons to me that this film just doesn't work. And I think on a technical level, a lot of the themes come back, but is it Silvestri doing the score again? Don't do your research, don't do your research. But a lot of the themes come back.
It's got that. It actually interestingly pushes the jungle theme a lot more than even the first one did, I think. But it does have that. I like it. I think it beats you over the head with it a little bit too much. And that sort of like sort of sound, that's a bad example. But it's because it has that monkey sound in the background that sort of they throw over the...
There is some nice stuff in it visually, but it's not that interesting. I mean, it's nothing you haven't seen before in other kind of city films. Lots of whip
Lots of like... and it's like that's a middle-aged man standing in a graveyard.
Because it's like if you showed that in one take, it's just a man standing on the spot,
looking very paranoid.
Yeah.
I think, look, don't get me wrong. I think it's setting it against a police procedural backdrop and in the city could have had it could have been handled a lot better. I think if the Predator was being more stealthy, if mob bosses were getting knocked off and no one knew why, and you didn't know why either. I mean, even as the audience, you did know why, but you didn't see much.
It would work probably a bit better if it was the first film.
Well,
Wouldn't be as good as the first film, but it might work better because you wouldn't know what was going on.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, if you're watching people solve a mystery you know the answer to, and I know Columbo did that very well over many, many years, and Columbo would be a Predator in my estimations, but it's just not interesting.
That works when you're saying something but the character is growing by finding out by the end of it.
Do the characters move and grow? Not really.
Most of them die, and
then what's fucking Murtaugh learn? That aliens exist.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a family.
You'll get your chance, asshole. Like that's his end thing. Is it's like he doesn't seem. Bearing in mind that he's gone after this thing because it killed all his the main. He lets out that war cry and goes after it when it kills Bill Paxton. In a weird sort of makes a weird screamy noise, which is really weird. But he goes after it, and then it's like, and at the end of it, it's like he's just chuckling to himself with his cutlass or whatever,
it's a flintlock
pistol, going like, yeah, "You'll get your, don't worry, asshole, you'll get your chance." Like, and he's walking out. It's like, do you like them now? I don't really understand why. Like,
he's really big into antiques,
and it commits the same fucking sin that it makes it seem like humans are immune to the explosive material that predators use, whether it be propelling their ships or in their wristings. Because it's like all he does is jump away from it behind a rock.
I think in Predator, there's a fucking mushroom cloud.
Yeah,
it's like what?
There is a thing that's meant. I don't know if it's in ancillary text or whatever. It's all kind of blurred together, but like about how Dutch died after that from radiation poisoning or something.
Yeah, there's a thing about because when his brother goes looking for him, it turns out he's got rage poisoning.
Yeah, so
blah blah blah.
He didn't really get away from it. I don't know, but anyway, that probably wasn't a very comprehensive breakdown of Predator 2, but it was just our thoughts on it. So there you go.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Predator 2. I still like it. I know it's big, fluffy, dumb shit. Like even Peter Casey's, there's a lot of fuck ups in it.
What, like how his legs
fall to the floor and a load of blood comes down, but his torso stays in the air.
He grabbed onto a pipe.
And rigor mortis set in immediately.
Yeah, he was really strong and good.
When things like when the Predator takes his helmet off, its vision stays the same. That always bugged me.
That annoys me. But also, he's got additional vision modes.
Do you know what he says? There's a little, because it talks. You know when he's going through the
additional vision.
No, he goes. It's weird. It goes because when it finds them in the right spectrum of light, he goes, "Oh," and he goes, "Now you will die." He literally says, "Now you will die." Why has the Predator got an inner monologue?
I'll get you next time.
Yeah, gadgets. I mean, it goes like.
That's odd.
It is odd.
That's an odd thing.
When it also finishes his line about "you one ugly." Well, as if it saw the first film.
Oh, this is the thing again, and it's like in the Star Trek movies when they watch edited highlights of the previous films on tape.
Yeah, I know.
Like, what the fuck is
also
this
says shit happens, but that's because the Jamaican guy says it earlier and stuff. And there's that theme of predators mimicking and repeating people, but anyway. And he calls it pussy face, which I always thought was quite funny.
It's shit and I don't like it.
All right.
There's a really bad. Well, I think when he says "motherfucker," there's a really shit close up of a Predator puppet. Because one of the things that always sold the Predator effect for me is when the mask comes off, there are human eyes.
Yes.
It's got like these little plastic ping pong ball eyes, and it's like.
It's weird that.
And then the pussy face goes.
Yeah, it's too articulated, and it's funny because it goes like that. It doesn't seem to have the kind of. Yeah, I mean, it's never looked more real than it did in the first one because it was lit right.
The Predator design and the Alien design are this sort of externalized war between kind of anthropomorphized genitalia. It's kind of vagina monsters versus penis monsters.
It is really, yeah. And with a crab head.
They should have called it.
And in the first one, it's
Fanny versus Willy.
Crab Fanny versus Willy in a Willy.
Minge versus Wanger. That's what I'd call it.
Clunge versus cock.
Clunge versus Dingus.
There it is.
There you go.
Cut print. I'll be in my trailer. Yeah, I mean it is. It's It's a 1. I hope that was in some way edifying, or at least wasted 30-something minutes of your time satisfyingly. Please like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter and all that good stuff. All of that's down below. We've also
Twitter, Discord, Redbubble, PayPal. It's all in the description.
Yeah, we really appreciate any support, whether it is just, you know, even just watching this to the bitter end is very gratefully received. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week for more discussions on things. What are things?
Tatty bye.
Support your 7th or 8th favourite YouTube channel by buying crap, tat, junk, hogwash and filth at redbubble.com/people/Val Verde Shop.